So after 10 years, Australia have finally done it. They've beaten India in a series. I didn't think it would ever happen, but it has. And you know what? I thought we'd do a bit of a review of the series. So I've got Joe with me today, and we are going to go through. Now, Joe, 3-1 in the end. Do you think that was a fair result? Do you think Australia deserved to win? Do you think 3-1's the right scoreline for it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first test, like in Perth, was a poor performance from Australia.
Yeah.
And Cummins kind of came out at the end of that test match and like bigged up his squad, essentially saying, like, we're the best side in the world, like we're going to improve. And they did. So I think fair play, from that point of view. For me, it was definitely like more like overall in the series, it was more kind of like favored to Australia in terms of like, who deserved to win, essentially, is what I'm trying to say there. I definitely think that they played the better cricket throughout the series.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they made better use of the pitches, especially from a bowling point of view. I don't think India really got it right with their other quicks, aside from Bumrah. So, like, I definitely think that was a fair result. Maybe kind of 2-1 is perhaps a better reflection of the series. I don't think either side was at their best. But overall, I definitely say Australia would deserve winners. I think 3-1's fair.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, after the first test in Perth, I thought they were done. I know it's stupid to write off a team that's won, that they literally hold every single bilateral test trophy and the World Cup and the World Test Championship, and they're going to compete for the Champions Trophy, and they'll probably compete for the T20 World Cup in a couple of years' time. But I just think they are still an aging team, and I think I posted it on Twitter. I thought this series is just going to come down to who's less shit. And I kind of think it did. I still don't believe in that Australia batting lineup. What India are going to do, I have no idea. I thought Australia were far the better team in their home conditions. And I don't want to call the last two series in Australia flukes, because it was just a very weird series. Obviously, 2021 was COVID, and then you had sandpaper before that. I always back Australia to win in their home conditions because I just think they're a lot better in them than everyone else in the world, and you don't really get pitches like it. And they've still got world beaters. That bowling attack is still unbelievable, and I do think 3-1 is a fair result, but I did think it came down to Australia are just not as bad as India, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you said, they're just so good at home. That I think that obviously just really played into their hands. Both teams kind of feel like they're on a kind of transitional period at the moment. Obviously, there's so many different question marks about Australia, like the kind of age profiles of Australia, and it feels like India at a similar stage, but a little bit further down the line. Like Rohit seems to be done now, Ashwin's done. I kind of feel like Jadeja's going to be done fairly soon. And
Jadeja's such a weird one because
exactly, yeah.
From the series that he played against England not 12 months ago, he looks like 10 times worse now. And even in that New Zealand series, he looked awful. He just doesn't look like the same player that he was 6 months ago. I could not work out how he looked just so bad. I mean, they didn't even pick him for the first test.
Yeah. I think India have got a lot of kind of figuring out the next phase, because obviously we're at the end of the World Test Championship cycle now, and going into like 2025 to 2027, they're obviously going to be wanting to come back stronger. They've lost 2 finals and not even made this final, so it's going to be an important kind of transitional period for them now. Obviously, starting with the tour in England, which we'll talk about a bit later, I'm sure. But like, they're just at a weird place, and it's kind of like, like what direction do they kind of want to go with the team, leadership wise as well? Like, is Bumrah the right fit for a captain long term? There's so many different ways that they can go, and even the head coach, like Gambia, I'm sure there's a lot of questions about him and if he's the right fit as a head coach going forward. So yeah, they're in kind of a little bit of an odd place right now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Gambia that really interests me is that if they get knocked out in the semis of the Champions Trophy and they lose the series to England, do you think he's still got a job? Because I think he's gone.
Yeah, I think it strikes me as a little bit odd. Like, this whole, him and Rohit clearly don't seem to get on. Like, that was a little bit bizarre thing. I just feel like under Dravid they were a lot better. They played a lot more like kind of they played their cricket with a little more conviction than what they do now. They seem a little bit like half-hearted and unsure, I guess, of the direction of the team and the brand of cricket that they want to play. And I mean, you're right. If they don't win the Champions Trophy or reach the final and then don't do well in England, I don't see how Gambia can really keep his job, because to me, that's kind of India are a team who should be winning everything, or that's their expectations. And if you're not, ultimately, it's cutthroat, but that's how it is that he might end
Yeah,
up.
I do think that I think they picked a coach for a point that they thought they were going to be. I think they picked Gambia because they thought, okay, he'll just carry on what's happening and just make them a little bit more ruthless than they were necessarily before, which I think is the right thing. But all of a sudden, their old guard has fallen off a cliff in the last 6 months. And if you're looking at a rebuild, you probably don't want him doing it. You're going to want someone else. And I don't necessarily feel sorry for him, because I think the way he acts and I mean, I've never met him, I've never spoken to him, but everything that I get is that he's quite a confrontational, and he's got his own thoughts on different things and isn't one to be told that he's wrong. And I don't think that that's necessarily the coach that they're going to need going forward. And I think that's going to be their biggest problem rather than the actual results. And also, you've got 1.4 billion Indians that are supporting this side. If they're not going to say, okay, well, we don't mind losing for a year while you rebuild the team, they're going to want to win now, and they're going to want to win every game that they play, because that's just how India works. They're not going to turn around and say, yeah, you've brought some new players in and we get it. No, it's just not going to happen. They're going to want to win now.
Yeah, it's like I said, they're in a weird kind of situation. I think a lot of their youngsters aren't really living up to the hype either. I mean, I think Shubman Gill's a quality player. Like, I think he's absolutely class, but he doesn't really seem to know his role in the team. He's in and out of the team. I think that kind of thing happened to Prithvi Shaw. I mean, that's just, it's so sad to see him not at the top of his game where he should be, and I hope he can kind of get back to his best. There are lots of young players coming through. I mean, Sarfraz scored 100 against New Zealand and batted really well, and then wasn't even considered for any of the games in Australia.
I didn't get the Sarfraz thing. I thought he was great against England. I thought he was great against New Zealand, and I just don't understand why they didn't pick him.
And he was great in domestic cricket as well. I mean, he scored like at least one double ton, and he scored hundreds aside from that. So I understand that, you know, you in some ways you've got to be loyal to your old guard, you know, the likes of Rohit and Kohli, but also blooding new players. They've kind of gone the opposite of what England did with Anderson, whereas England were just ruthless with Anderson and got rid of him, rightly or wrongly, and have moved on now. India feel like they kind of need to perhaps make that decision with Virat and Rohit. So, I mean, it feels like they have now with Rohit eventually, but they're just in a weird place, and I'm not really sure the direction they go.
But the thing is that's just how Indian cricket work, isn't it? It's the fans support the players more than they support the team. That's why CSK have got so many fans. That's why RCB have got so many fans, because they don't support the team. They support Virat or Dhoni or whoever it's going to be. That's the issue that they've got. Is Rohit done? I mean, he says he's available for the England series.
I don't see a way back for him personally. I think I tweeted that during the series. I think that was during the MCG test when he went back to the top of the order, which I don't think he should have done. I don't think that was the move, because KL Rahul have been very, very good at the top of the order. Him and Jaiswal had formed quite a good opening partnership. Yeah. And I don't see a way back for him now. The fact that he's like opted out of a game, I just think the phrase is weird. Like the whole thing just kind of is very odd to me. I just don't understand the decision. And if he's, you know, retiring or is going to get dropped, fair enough. But you can't just pick and choose when you play. That's the kind of issue I have. So certainly with that kind of phrase, you know, if you can say I'm dropping myself, completely different. But opting out doesn't. I don't really.
I think he was dropped. I don't think that there's any way that you can kind of go around it. I do think that he was dropped. I mean, I was listening to the Great Cricketer today, and they said something. I can't remember if it was the Great Cricketer or if it was the Final Word, but it was one of them. And they said that there was also an issue with Rohit and Ashwin. So Rohit wanted Ashwin picked for the first test while he was away, They didn't pick him. He then made sure that he was picked in the second test, and then obviously retired after that. I don't know. It's all sounds very odd, and I don't
Yeah.
kind of know where they're going. The
Yeah.
one thing that I will say about them is that they do have Jasprit Bumrah, and he is by far the best bowler in the entire world.
Probably the
He's
best cricketer in the world. Genuinely, he's that good. I think you'd maybe say, well, then honestly, those to the top two, he's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I cannot comprehend how good he is, and this was probably the best series I've ever seen someone have. I mean, you're talking Steve Smith 2019, kind of that level. Mitchell Johnson 13-14. That's the series he's had. And without him, I know we said that 3-1's probably a fair result, and India could have made it 2-1, 2-all, but without Bumrah, this is 5-0 pretty comprehensively, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, 32 wickets at 13. He obviously bowled his heart out in all but one of the innings. It was such a shame to see him get injured for that. Obviously, that last innings. I thought it was very courageous of him to come out and bat because, I mean, he was clearly not in a condition to do so. He just batted very gingerly. I was just like,
Yeah, I think there was a
kind of
pull shot that he
someone-
played early on that he just didn't look right, and as soon as he
exactly.
played that shot, I thought, okay, yeah, he's not going to bowl. It's not going to happen.
It was a shame to not see him because I also think on that wicket, I mean, it was so bowler friendly that India actually could have won that game if they'd had Bumrah there. It was just, as you say, the most incredible series I've ever seen. Like, I'm kind of lost for words, like about how good he was. He just tore through the Australian top order like I've never seen anyone do before. I think that Perth Test match, both innings, but especially that first innings, kind of set the tone for Bumrah for the whole series, and it almost just put this fear factor in the Australian batters' minds. And from there, it was just something like a weight that they couldn't get off their shoulders, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. It was just an outrageous series. I'd say probably the second best series I've ever seen a bowler have, aside from Johnson, like you mentioned earlier. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think Kawaja said it. I think it was I can't remember who it was. SEN or someone like that. After the test, and he just said, "Look, I had a terrible series, but I just got bummered. Like, I couldn't do anything. It's just the action's too funny. It's too quick. It's too accurate. The seam moves too much, and he's just hitting me front pad every single time, and I just can't play it."
The thing is, I don't think I saw him bowl one bad delivery. I mean, he's going on through the night, so I didn't see him bowl. I didn't see him bowl every delivery, but from what I have, the highlights, everything, I don't think I saw him bowl really one bad delivery. He might have got hit for four a couple of times, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad delivery. Like his consistency, his ability to just hit the exact same line of length every single time, and he can swing the ball, he can seam the ball both ways. He's rapid. He's got a weird action, which is hard to kind of, well, not really pick, but it kind of, I guess, a bit off-putting, I'd imagine. He's just phenomenal, like a ridiculous bowler.
Yeah, I just imagine with that action, you just don't face anything like it.
No.
I think it's probably a little bit. I mean, not on the same level, but it must have been what facing someone like Malinga or something like that. It's just there's certain rhythms I think as a batsman you're used to, and as soon as something is slightly different, especially when the ball's coming at you at nearly 90 mile an hour and you're going through that it's just got to throw you off completely, and it's so accurate. And he gets so much movement, and it's going from as a kid being bowling with a rubber ball on concrete that he can just make the ball talk at any point. The one thing that I was really impressed with him is that I think he was struggling with the new ball before this series, but maybe even not in the last 12 months, but before, the biggest criticism was, okay, well, when the ball gets a bit older and it starts reversing, that's when Bumrah's coming into his own. But I think now he's now got that skill, and for me, I think he's the best fast bowler of all time. That might be slightly brave, but especially in my lifetime, I have McGrath, Anderson, whoever you want to mention. Okay, I didn't see the West Indies teams in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but for me, in my lifetime, since I've watched cricket since the start of 2004 or whenever it was, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anyone that I would want to face less than him.
No, I mean, he's definitely up there. Like, I think I tweeted this during the game, during the series, is that like it's okay to put him on that kind of pedestal. I
Yeah,
genuinely think he's that good. Like talk about like fast bowlers peaks. Like Bumrah is well, maybe not even at his peak yet, which is scary, but he's genuinely getting to that kind of level now. And to call him the greatest fast bowler of all time is not like a wild thing to say, in my opinion. He's
yeah.
genuinely.
And I think
Um,
the thing that he has in his favour as well is that he's also right now the best white ball bowler in the world as well.
of course, yeah, yeah,
Which okay, it wasn't T20 cricket wasn't as big as it was even 20 years ago. But I think that matters, and I think that the way history looks back is he's going to be remembered as the best fast bowler in the world. But I mean, in terms of someone that seems to be the best fast bowler in the world at the same time is Scott Boland. How has he had another amazing series? Every time I watch Scott Boland, he's either doing something incredible or Joe Root's reverse scooping him over the slips and he's away and he's averaging 100 in England. There's nothing in between.
no, he's a fantastic bowler. I think it's so unfortunate for him that it's come at a time when Australia have Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins, and obviously Hazelwood's injury has like essentially allowed him the opportunity to play in this series. 21 wickets at 13.19 in this series in 3 Test matches. I mean, if he'd had the other 2 Test matches, we could be talking kind of Bumrah numbers. It's not outrageous to think that,
Yeah.
like obviously he might have got injured or anything like that. But just purely on the numbers and how he'd been going, it's not outrageous to think that. Again, I mentioned before about how Bumrah can consistently hit the same line on length every single time. Boland does that. He takes that to a whole other level. I think on the Fox Sport broadcast they had like a little blue square and just like a kind of like beehive kind of thing of where he'd been hitting, and every single one was in this blue square. That was in his spell in the second Test match in the 5th Test match in the second innings, and every single ball was just in this blue square. And for me, that just sums Scott Boland up. A fantastic bowler, and he's not slow either. Like he can hit 135 pretty consistently.
Yeah.
130,
And I think that's all you need in Australia anymore. I think gone are the days where you need to bowl 90 mile an hour. I don't think you need to. I think it's 84 mile an hour and wobble soon.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the ball. And I do think that the thing with Boland for me is Jared Kimber said it on something that I was watching the other day, and yeah, it's really unlucky that Scott Boland has been born in this era and plays in this era, and that he's got Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood that he sat behind. But without the wobble ball, Scott Boland is an okay Shield cricketer. Maybe gets a county contract, but that wobble ball has completely changed his career. He's a completely different bowler, and it has changed a lot of people's careers. I mean, if Stuart Broad doesn't learn it 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, is he remembered as the same bowler? I don't think he is. So it's difficult. It's changed so many careers, and I do think that Boland is unbelievably good. I would have loved to have seen him at Durham last year, because I don't think that the what we saw of him in the Ashes is necessarily what we'd see Boland at his best, if you know what I mean. I do think the Australian conditions suit him so well, but I would have liked to see him at Durham. I don't know. Do you know if he's coming back this summer? Or is he...
I have a feeling he is, but I'm not 100% sure. But that would be incredible if he was. Obviously, playing county Division 1. I mean, that's like obviously the standard is really strong, but also Durham are a very good side, and he's only going to strengthen that. So it's going to be a great test for him as well, because you mentioned he sometimes struggled in England. So that's definitely going to be a great test and just a good watch for English county fans and county fans around the world.
Yeah, I also think in terms of if he does go and play at Durham this year, I actually think it benefits England, because I think Potts is a very, very similar bowler to Boland. I think that if he could learn from Boland for a couple of months while they're playing county cricket together, I think that would massively benefit him. I don't want to get too off topic, but I really rate Potts, and I think that he could be a Boland type. And looking forward to the Ashes, I actually do think that England have a lot of bowlers that are 84 mile an hour and can bowl wobble seam. Okay, they're not as accurate, they're not going to be as good as Boland, but if they start throwing pitches out like that, do you think that you need to be as accurate as Boland? You just need to kind of put it in an area and someone's going to snick off eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because the pitches were strange this series. You mentioned before how you don't necessarily need to be 90 mile an hour. You can just be kind of like 84, 85 mile an hour wobble seam bowler. And England do have a lot of them. Gus Atkinson's a pretty similar kind of bowler to that. Potts, obviously, and even Bryden Carse, although he's a little bit quicker. So England have a lot of bowlers like that in their arsenal. And if the pitches are like this, or like we've seen this winter, does beg the question: do we even need to play a spinner? Because
I wouldn't.
assuming Jacob Bethel's going to be playing, which I would be very surprised if he doesn't, unless he has a horrendous time against India. Obviously, Joe Root's there; he's more than handy. There's two spinners who can hold up an end, and we've kind of seen that England have employed that in England before. Never really thought about that in Australia, but if the pitches are like this again, well, the likes of Potts, Atkinson, Carse could all be playing in the same lineup, and then Mark Wood or Jofra Archer, that's quite a scary prospect, and that's a very good attack. So if that's something that is up for consideration, if the pitches are like this, I definitely think England should think about that.
Yeah, I do. I do think that you could extend the batting lineup if you go rather than going an extra seamer. If you just wanted to go with three seamers and stuff, see, it depends on Stokes.
That's the thing. Stokes' injuries, yeah.
If you wanted to go, if Stokes is fully fit and can bowl for 5 matches, if you wanted to go three seamers, then you could stick an extra batter in there. You could have a team where Stokes is almost batting 7 or 8, with Jamie Smith at 7 or 8, or Ollie Pope at 7 or 8. There is a way that you can fit them all in if you don't go spinner, or you just go for the extra seamer. The thing that worries me about that was obviously Wood and Archer's injuries. But I mean, with the Australian pitches, do you think it's fair that Australia put out pitches that favour them so much when they give so much stick to the Indians for doing exactly the same thing?
Well, I don't think it's fair that anyone can criticise anyone as long as no one's breaking any rules and they're not creating dangerous pitches or just creating roads where it's just going to be 500 or 600 plays, 600 plays, whatever. I don't think it's really fair for anyone to criticise anyone. So if Australia want to create seamer-friendly pitches in their own country, which plays into their hands, I think that's fair. At the same time, if India wants to create, like turning pitches that plays into the hands of their spinners, fair enough. So I think Australia just had a tactic and exploited it. And, whether or not it's kind of fair for them to criticise and then do that, I guess it's hypocritical, isn't it? But like I say, I don't think anyone's in a position to kind of like I said, criticize anyone. As your pitch can do what you want, essentially.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was anything. I actually think all the Australian pitches were fine, with the exception of the Sydney pitch. I thought the Sydney pitch was a shit tip.
I didn't think it was necessarily a bad pitch. I just thought it was almost too seamer friendly. It didn't have any danger, bounce off a dangerous length or off a full length that you might not expect or anything like that. I just thought it wasn't seamer friendly. Sorry, it wasn't spinner friendly.
Yeah,
that was kind of like.
No, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say that was kind of obviously the kind of theme throughout the series. I mean, Lyon took 9 wickets in 5 tests, Jadeja 4 wickets in 3 tests, Washington Sundar 3 wickets in 3 tests, and Ashwin obviously played the 1 test and took 1 wicket. They were the frontline spinners that played, and the lack of impact that's 4 quality test spinners. They had no impact. So, I just think that bar the Sydney test, like you say, that was kind of very seamer friendly. I just think they kind of lent towards favouring the quicks, which obviously Bumrah wasn't complaining about, I guess.
No, I mean, I think Lyon bowled the least amount of overs that he's ever bowled in a Australian summer before. It was about 120 overs, which really isn't a lot. He's always top of their overs bowled list because it just gives them a chance to rotate those 3 quicks around him. It just wasn't needed. And I have no idea if Australia roll out these pitches for next winter. I imagine they would. Can't imagine anything changing. I know that the groundsmen, the curators, whatever you want to call them, tried a couple of different things. I know that Perth curator decided to go with a little bit more grass on because the way that the Perth pitch had gone in the past was that there were so many runs scored on day one. The average was 75 with the bat, and then it would just gradually drop off. So whoever won the toss batted first and won the game. What happened was obviously the 17 wickets or whatever it was that fell in day one. They got that just wrong. And then I think with the Sydney pitch, there was something about the grass. They came out and said that because of the AFL season being so close to the cricket season, they used a different grass this time. So that's why the pitch was. I mean, I'm used to going to the SCG and the pitch being dead, relatively slow and easy to bat on. And that's usually why England do okay at the SCG. But it obviously wasn't the case this time. I don't see it. I haven't got an issue with it. I think that you should have your home advantages. I'd like people to be a little bit more honest about it when they're doing it and come out and say, we are making these pitches because we think it would favour us. I don't like Pakistan did when they had the patio heaters and the big fans and different things. I just say, look, we want these conditions. We are going to make these conditions. I mean, to be fair to Australia, is that the pitch that they should have had in that fifth test is an absolute road that scores 800 apiece and just play out for the draw. So you can tell that they weren't necessarily doctoring it for them, but I do think, especially in the last 4 years, they've tried to have pitches that have suited their bowlers. And with Kookaburra changing the ball as well, it's just really, really difficult to bat in Australia now.
I think that would make for a better Ashes series because England have obviously historically had lots of good seam bowlers. And like we mentioned, the current crop and potentially some more, or a couple that I think could make the play in the likes of Sam Cook and someone who I really like is Tom Laws. I think he's a fantastic bowler. I hope he gets a look in. You know, if you're talking about these guys, you know, who are already in the setup and potentially some on the fringes, Saki Mahmood, potentially fitness dependent, is another one. Like, I think it will make for a better Ashes series, and it might be a bit of a low scoring Ashes series, but I suppose the value for your runs is there. Like, it is really worth scoring 100. And actually, Bo Webster's 50 and less so perhaps Pant's 60 odd in the final test match, because obviously Pant just like blitzed it from ball one. But certainly Webster's 50. I mean, I thought that was worth 100 on another pitch. It's like Smith's 33. You know, he's going on and kicking on another pitch. So, like, I think it will make for a really good Ashes series, an interesting Ashes series, and definitely play into England's hands. So, look, if Australia want to prepare those kind of pitches, then I think England will be ready, because the crop of fast bowlers that we've got now is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Bo Webster, because I thought he was absolutely incredible in this last test. It makes picking Marsh for 4 tests look relatively stupid. And I feel sorry for Bo Webster, because I think he's too old, and he's always going to be behind Cameron Green.
Yeah, I think that's quite a frustrating, like, that's the frustrating side of it. I do think that, we mentioned earlier about Lyon's lack of involvement. Perhaps, injury depending next year, they could also pick 2 all-rounders and not pick Lyon, and, perhaps go Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, or, Stark, Boland, Cummins, whatever they want to go, and then have Webster and Green. That's another thing that Australia could do. But Webster's a fantastic player. He's dominated Shield cricket. I've enjoyed watching how much he has dominated Shield cricket over the last couple of years. He's a destructive batter. He hits the ball so cleanly and really knows his game. He's very organised. And honestly, he's a very effective bowler. Like, he doesn't bowl quick. We mentioned about hitting the spot and getting that seam moving, and Webster does that. So a very effective bowler and knows his game. Is very organised at the crease. So perhaps come a couple of years too late, like you're saying, they'll always favour Green. But they talked about Green opening the batting as well before, obviously, this whole opening the batting thing. And we don't know how long Kawaj is going to play for now, so maybe they'll move Green up the order. There's a lot of different things Australia can do as well, like I mentioned earlier with India.
I mean, what do Australia do with their openers? Because for me, Kawaj is done. I think I'd put him in the same category as Rohit Sharma. I think the eyes have gone. No opening batsman gets better after 38. That just doesn't happen in cricket. He's had a great career, and there is nothing wrong with him stepping away and saying, look, hands up, I'm done. I've had a great career. I don't want to go on for too long. I don't see a world where he makes the Ashes next year. I don't know what you think.
No, I don't think he'll make the Ashes. I think he will definitely go to Sri Lanka, because
I think he goes to Sri Lanka. I don't think there's enough time to get someone else new.
There's not. They're not going to go back to McSweeney at the top of the order. Although he should come into the middle order, because people have been trying to talk about like the next crop of like the Fab Four, which is a whole other debate. But I think no one's mentioned McSweeney, and they should be, because he's fantastic. So McSweeney needs to come back into the fold in some shape or form. I think Kawaja will also probably play in the World Test Championship final, and then that kind of start of the Shield season in 2025 before the Ashes will be what we've had this year, replacing Warner, which is just try and unless Kawaja goes and scores loads of runs himself, which you say that people can't get better after 38. Well, it's probably true, but you never know, I suppose. So who knows what can happen there? But I think that'll probably just be another straight shootout for a spot at the top of the order, and it's interesting to see who they will pick it up. Personally, I think Green's got a solid technique. I don't think he could necessarily think he could open, but definitely can bat in that top four. Maybe they decide to move Marnus up the order. I think that's probably the most sensible thing to do. Just kind of makes the most logical sense. There's not really an opener knocking on the door, apart from Constance. He's obviously in the side now. So it's a bit of a weird one, but Kawhi is one of my favorite players of all time. So I absolutely love watching him play for Lancs as well. So
yeah, I think he's had a great career. I think he's a great player. And it's always sad to see someone that really fought his way back into that side. I mean, the way that Kawaja was not necessarily treated because he got dropped because he was out of form, but the way he fought back to get into that side every single time is you've got to take your hat off to him. He has been incredible, and then that series that they don't get anywhere near the Ashes in 2023 if Kawaja doesn't have the series that he had.
Not all.
Now, his opening partner definitely made a few headlines. Sam Constance, 19 years old. It felt incredibly Bazball when they picked him. This young bloke who hasn't played a lot of Shield cricket. I mean, he wasn't actually that attacking in Shield cricket. I don't know what's come over him.
He shot at 50 in first class cricket before he got into the test fold, so it was weird.
It's almost like he scored that 50 in the BBL just before he got called up and was like, oh, maybe I'll just bat this way now. Maybe everything I've ever done for the last 19 years was wrong. I'll just bat like this. Him ramping Bumrah in his first ever innings in Test match cricket was a sight to behold. It really was. Yeah. What's happened after is a little bit... I'm squinting at it a little bit. I don't get it. I think he's been incredibly arrogant and incredibly cocky. I don't like it. I think there's if this was any other team, there would be a lot of Australian press saying, why is he doing this? Which there is for Constance, but I don't know. What do you think? Do you like the confidence? I'm going to put
an extent. Like I think there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, unless you're someone like Virat Kohli who can be arrogant because he's one of the best players in the world or one of the best players of all time, whatever. So I think there's definitely a fine line between confidence and arrogance for a lot of players, most players. He definitely treaded that line. I mean, starting off with obviously the way when Virat shoulder barged him in his first test match at the SCG, the MCG, that was all on Virat. That was out of order from Virat, and I think that's probably what kick-started the fire in his belly, I guess. Yeah. The whole turning round to Bumrah thing, that last ball on day one, I think, wasn't it? That was just odd. I didn't understand that necessarily. Like I said, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, and that for me is when he treaded it. But at the same time, he's 19 and he's going to make mistakes, and this kind of thing can happen. It's happened to so many cricketers, and who've gone on to become fantastic players have made mistakes like that, at the age of 19, 20, whatever. So I definitely think just rein it in a little bit, rein the aggression in when he's batting in as well, because I definitely think, there can be tweaks to the way he bats, which will make him a better player. And I think it will come good because I think he's a very, very good player. But that kind of side of his game, definitely just rein it in a little bit. Don't necessarily get rid of it though, because I do think that can work in a lot of players' favours.
No, and I think the problem that he has is that this Australian side, since Sandpaper, have been, no, we're moving away from being the bad guys. We are the good guys. We care about climate change and we don't sledge you in the field anymore. And Constance kind of, I don't know, geeing up the crowds, getting in people's faces, the occasional sledge at bat pad, kind of Conor McGregor walking in, and it all feels a little bit naff for a bloke that's now averaging under 30 and hasn't scored more than 60. I do think there is a time where you can act like that, in your second Test match or even your first Test match when you've scored 60 runs is not the time. I think you need to earn your stripes before you start doing that. I think he's going to be a really good player, and I think that he needs to play his natural game. I don't think he needs to go out there and slog it. He's gone too far with it. If you want to use the ramp, that's absolutely fine. But the way you got out in that second innings at the SCG was grim.
Yeah, it was. It felt very basketball, didn't it? It really did. Like there's a kind of, I talked about treading the line between confidence and aggression. That's kind of treading the line between aggressive batting and like kind of just ridiculous, like not ridiculous way to get out. Well, I suppose so. I mean, look at how Ollie Pope got out in that third test against New Zealand. Yeah. I'd probably put that in the same category. Different circumstances, obviously, but yeah, I think Constance is a fantastic player. Part of me also thinks the reason he's batting like that is with the Champions Trophy in mind. I made a bold prediction the other day on Twitter that he's going to go for the Champions Trophy, and part of me thinks perhaps he's trying to show that aggressive side to get himself in that fold, because I think there's perhaps a spot at the top of the order there as well. So I don't know. That's a bit of an outlandish one, a bit off topic, but maybe that's why he's trying to show that more aggressive side.
Yeah, I can see. I mean, I presume he's going to go play some Big Bash games now. So if he can score a few runs in there, maybe. I mean, whose place is he going for? Mitch Marsh's?
Well, yeah, I think Marsh, Fraser McGurk, and Matt Short are all kind of going for one. Short's injured. I don't know when he's going to be back. Fraser McGurk's been out of nick, so he'll probably go, but I don't think he'll necessarily get into the team. And then obviously Marsh is someone who they back a lot in white ball cricket, and I still think in white ball cricket definitely will be a good player, but obviously has also been out of nick. And Constance is the kind of guy who Australia would just pick and take a punt on. So I could definitely see it happening. I wouldn't be surprised if he at least made the squad, but if not open with Travis Head.
Yeah, I could see it happening. I mean, out of nick, Virat Kohli, now averaging, under 30 nearly for the last 5 years?
Yeah.
I cannot comprehend how someone has fallen off a cliff like he has. I did think at one point when he scored that 100 in Perth that have Australia managed to get Virat Kohli back in form. The answer was no. He didn't get anywhere near it. He pissed a lot of people off. I think the highlight of his tour was probably either shoulder barging Constance or showing empty pockets to the crowd on the last day. I don't know what he's going to take more pride on. I don't know. Is he going to retire? Is he done?
I can't remember who said it. Someone said that they think 3 or 4 more years for Kohli in Test cricket. That will take him to the end of the next World Test Championship cycle as in 2029. So that is like a long time. I don't think he'll go on that long, but he might have one more cycle in him. He might play Test cricket until the end of 2027, perhaps. I think he'll definitely want to tour England because I think he's got a point to prove in England to an extent. Obviously, there's no Jimmy Anderson this time, and Jimmy's kind of been his nemesis in Test cricket in England. So I think perhaps he'll try and want to tour England, but it's just weird, isn't it? The way he keeps getting out, the fact that he just keeps chasing these balls outside off stump, it's just strange. And he got out every single innings like that. To not change it, I just don't understand. I mean, Scott Boland literally said on TV how they're going to get him out, and he didn't do anything about it. So
everyone can get him out. I mean, there is only one way to bowl at him. I think I could get him out at this point. I mean, it's just fifth, sixth stump.
Yeah, it is very odd. And like I say, when that happens 1, 2, or 3 times, it's annoying. But you kind of go to the nets and work on it. It's like Marnus at the start of the series. He got 2 off 50 odd, so he went away and kind of worked on being more proactive. Obviously, different kind of thing. But the point is, he goes to the nets and works on it. But Virat didn't. Obviously, well, I mean, he might have worked on it, but obviously didn't have any impact on his game. So it's just very odd. The whole thing was odd.
Yeah, I mean, all 10 dismissals were the same in this series. Every single one of them.
It's crazy. Like when Kohli's in form, there's no doubt he's one of the best batters probably ever to watch. Let's be honest, he's ridiculous. But the decline that he's currently on is really sad, and hopefully he can find his form again in the Champions Trophy. Because if he keeps getting dismissed like this in white ball cricket as well, then I'll be a little bit more worried. So hopefully kind of rectify things. Champions Trophy, IPL, come back to Test cricket with a clear head, because I assume he will tour England. I'd be surprised if he didn't.
Yeah, I mean ODI is his best format.
Yeah,
So if he can find some form doing that, then that would be. I mean, I think that's the only thing that's going to save him. If he has a poor Champions Trophy, I think they probably give him the England series. But I think that's as if that's another poor series. I don't see how they give him any
I
more
mean they've got a
room.
lot of middle order batters. Like we talked earlier about Shub McGill. I think he is a number 4 is quite suitable to that role. And for me, India's long term number 3 will be Sai Hassan. I think I spoke about him a lot on social media. I think he's wonderful. He's played. I've seen him mainly playing for Surrey in the county
Yeah,
championship. Also, he's done well for his domestic team in India, and he obviously went on the India A tour to Australia before the Test series. So I think for me, he's definitely going to be India's long-term number 3. It's just about when do they bring him in? How do they get him into that side? Because it might mean dropping Gill if they keep Kohli. Maybe Kohli could go further down the order. Don't know if it'll make a difference. Maybe he could bat 5. There's a lot, again, like we said earlier, there's a lot of different things that India could do and ways they could take it. So it'll be interesting to see.
yeah, and there's also probably what Sarfraz is looking for that number 4, 5
South,
spot as well.
yeah.
I think there's enough there to look at really and think, okay, yeah, maybe it's time to move on, because that's the one thing for India is that there is so much talent there that
Exactly. Yeah.
they can just kind of take your picks.
They won't really miss a beat kind of thing. You know, you take Kohli and Rowe out of the team, and it's a shame because they're legends of the game. No one's going to dispute that. But are they in their best form right now? No. That might help the team in the long run. And, you know, it probably would. Let's be honest. Certainly we've taken Rowe out of the team because sadly I think his international career Test level might be over.
India's next series is against England. Prediction? 6 months out?
3-1 England. Yeah.
I'm in the same camp. I think if we don't get one rained out, it's 4-1. If we get one rained out, it's 3-1.
Yeah.
I think that England are getting a lot of stick at the moment because we're 6th in the World Test Championship table. We are a better team than that. And I don't think what anyone realises is that England have actually had a complete revamp of their squad in the last 12 months.
Massively, yeah. It's a different squad to what we took to India at the start of 2024. Like the whole kind of, I mean, we've got Bethel in there now. The fast bowling unit has changed. So much has changed. And I am going into that India series, as you say, 6 months out or whatever it is, quietly confident because India are a little bit, I guess, shell-shocked after the Australia tour where they blitzed the first test, fell off kind of towards the end of the series. I definitely think this is England's best chance to beat India at home for a longer time. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident. I don't really worry. I think until India have that big revamp of their squad, I think they're going to struggle. I think the old guard's got to go, the Jadejas, the Kohlis, the Rohits. They've got to start moving on from them. I'd even put Siraj into that conversation, unless you can find a new second bowler.
I think
I'd be interested to see what happens with Shami.
Yeah,
it just feels like he's been out for so long now.
Part of me just think that they would have taken a punt on Shami if they kind of saw him long term. They would have kind of gambled. When you're losing a series, I understand obviously Shami's, 37, 38, whatever he is, but
he's younger than that. He's only about 33.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
Yeah, no, I thought he was like 37, 38 as well, but no, he's a lot younger.
Oh, wow. Well, then maybe I'd say that, but I was going to say he's not going to play one-day cricket, so maybe they risk him, but yeah, I don't know. It is weird the kind of direction that they'll go with the bowling attack as well. I mean, I've said it so many times is that there's so many different routes that they could go over the next kind of 4 or 5, well, less than that, 2-3 years. India, it's going to be definitely interesting to see how they shape the bowling attack around Bumrah. Mayank Yadav, I hope he plays some kind of Test cricket. Fantastic bowler. Obviously, everyone's seen him in the IPL. That's where I've seen him most, like everyone.
He's the one that bowls, 95 plus.
Yeah, if they can get his body like able to play Test cricket, even if it's just 2 games out of a 5-match series,
yeah,
what an impact he would have. And it would take so much stress off Bumrah as well, so much pressure off Bumrah. That would be an incredible impact. So potentially someone there who further down the line they can look at. But yeah, he's someone who I hope will play Test cricket at some point.
Yeah. So 3-1, 4-1 England in the summer. Now the big one for me, Australia, England in the Ashes next winter.
I'm going to sit on the fence and say 2-2. I think we can do them. I think this is, I say do them, at least win a couple of games. I think this is our best chance at beating Australia down under in so long. And obviously, I predicted a draw there. As I say, I'm sitting on the fence a bit, but my heart says 3-2. I just think that we can go there, and they've got an aging team. Kawaj is getting on a little bit. Smith. People have been out of nick. The bowling attack is good, but injuries and Stark was not 100% in the fifth test at the SCG against India. So I think this is England's best chance in years. And this is what this McCullum Stokes project has been building towards, is this Ashes series down under. How many years have we been talking about this now? So this is the chance. This is the time to go and win it. And as I say, I'm sitting on the fence and saying 2-2, but my heart says 3-2. So or 2-1, something like that.
This 12-month period defines the Stokes-McCullum experiment.
Massively.
This is if Bazball is a success or not. It's not as much as I want them to care about the World Test Championship. The World Test Championship doesn't mean anything if England win the series against India in the summer and Ashes down under. I agree. I think this is the best opportunity that we have had since the 10-11 series.
Yeah.
This is probably the best team that's gone there since 10-11. You could probably say maybe 13-14 was a slightly better team. But again, aging.
I was about to say, kind of similar to India now, that 13-14 team. So
yeah, everyone hated each other by the end, and they gave up so much. But I think it's in that conversation. Yeah. I think it depends on what happens with India in the summer. Because if everyone has a great summer, then we don't really have to change anything for Australia. I don't think this setup will change much for Australia. I'm really interested to see what they do with Bethel and Pope. There's a way you fit them both into the side. I don't know if they're brave enough to drop a spinner or drop Crawley, because I think that's the only way that you get them into the side, both of them. And if even Pope deserves a spot.
Yeah, I think Pope showed a lot of ability in the middle order. Like, he's clearly a middle order player. I think when he's in at 3, he cashes in. But too often he falls to that new ball. I think he falls an extraordinary amount of times in the first 20 balls of his innings, and that's his downfall. So Pope in the middle order, I mean, I don't have a problem. He's a quality player if he bats in the middle order. Number 3, I'm not so sure, but Bethel, for me, is undroppable. He showed the perfect kind of makeup of a number 3. He fit the Bazball mould. He's attacking and he can score runs, but also the way he soaks up pressure in New Zealand, the lack of care about having dot balls, not in a bad way, in a good way. It didn't faze him, and for me, it just makes Bethel the dream number 3. I mean, the likes of Sam Hain, Tom Abel, Josh Bohannon, they're all players I would love to see. But now Bethel's here, I don't think you can drop Bethel.
No, I agree. I mean, in terms of Australia, do you think they line up similar to what they did against India? You'd probably say. I just still think that Kawaj is going to open next winter.
It's hard to say. It is hard to say. I mean, look, injuries. Obviously, we mentioned aging squad. If Hazelwood or Stark get injured, they're the two who I worry about with their bowling attack. There's a lot of quality bowlers on the fringes. Fergus O'Neill, I'm desperate for him to get a test opportunity. He's going to be playing county championship for Notts at the start of next season, so watch out for him because he's a wonderful bowler. Jai Richardson, I'm so happy he's back in the test fold, and hopefully he gets back in permanently because he's a wonderful bowler. Lance Morris, another brilliant bowler. There's so many bowlers on the fringes that if Hazelwood and Stark do get injured, Spencer Johnson's another one, the perfect start replacement in my opinion. If these guys get injured, you've got someone who I think can step in and do just a good job. I also am kind of waiting for Cooper Connolly to break into the test side because for me, he's Australia's Bethel. I think the maturity he's shown in the Big Bash, batting at number 3 for the Perth Scorchers, for me shows in a couple of tough circumstances where he's, faced more balls and he scored runs, which isn't common in T20s. But that's obviously happened a few times for him. for me, he's Australia's best. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's fast tracked. I think he'll go to Sri Lanka. I'd be surprised if he didn't, to be honest. And I do think he will be playing Test cricket in the next 18 months, whether or not that's kind of in the Ashes or a little bit further on. Hard to see, but he's brilliant.
I'd be surprised because obviously the England Lions go out to Australia in a week's time.
Something like that, yeah.
I'll be interested to see what sides Cricket Australia put out as their A sides.
Yes. Part of me thinks that a couple of their players will be, kind of fringe Test players already who are potentially in the thoughts for South Africa, the likes of Kuhnemann, Mitch Swepson. I think Inglis will play. He's another one who also could get into the Test side, is Josh Inglis. I mean, they've got a lot of quality, kind of certainly with the ball, and I think with the bat, there's a couple of hidden gems there. Look at Webster. For me, I guess you would call him a hidden gem. Not necessarily many people were talking about him 2 years ago, and I look at him. I think that it's, as you say, going to be interesting to see the A side that they put out, and then going forward, who do they stick with? Will McSweeney get into the A side as an opener? Will they continue with that kind of experiment, or will he be back into the middle order? A lot of different areas that they can go down. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, as much as I want to say that Australia's done and that when the old players are gone, they'll be stuffed, I don't think they're going to be. I think there is a bit of depth in Shield cricket, and the Big Bash are bringing them through as well. I don't think they're going to be as good as the current generation, but this is probably, I genuinely think you could have an argument with this Australian generation and the early 2000s, Warner,
100%.
Ponce.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Which is, I never ever thought that I'd put someone in a team in the same conversation as that team 10 years ago, but they aren't that good, which is probably why we haven't won an Ashes in the last 10 years, which hurts. But Winter, you heard it here first. We're going to win 3-1, and I'm pretty confident about that. Stokes will lift the urn in Sydney, and we'll be absolutely fine. But that's probably all for today. Joe, thank you so much for coming on. If anyone does want to check out Joe, I will put all of his socials in the description. So make sure to go check him out before you go. Like, subscribe, do all the usual stuff. And I'll see you guys for another episode.